Imagine, for a moment, that all of human knowledge is a single, magnificent structure, a cathedral of understanding, built over centuries. Each peer-reviewed study is a brick, laid with care. Each validated theory is a pillar, supporting the floors above. Each law of nature is a foundational stone, anchoring the entire edifice to reality. This is the house of science. It is humanity's greatest project. It is where we house our models of the universe, our cures for diseases, our understanding of the cosmos, and our fragile insights into the labyrinth of the human mind. It is a structure designed to be objective, cumulative, and above all, true. We live inside this house. Our modern world, our technology, our medicine, our very safety. It all depends on the integrity of these walls. But what happens when cracks begin to appear? Not small, cosmetic fissures, but deep, structural fractures in the very foundation. What happens when a group of meticulous inspectors, scientists themselves, begin to suspect that many of the bricks are hollow, that some of the pillars are made not of solid steel, but of sand? This is not a hypothetical scenario. Over the last decade, the inspectors have arrived, and their report has sent a tremor of profound existential dread through the scientific community. They found that a significant portion of our magnificent house may be a facade, a Potemkin village of promising results built on a foundation of statistical illusion and systemic bias. This is the story of a quiet, ongoing intellectual earthquake. A crisis, not of a single theory, but of the very method we use to build truth. It's a story that reveals how the noble pursuit of knowledge can be corrupted by the very human pressures of career, prestige, and the seductive desire to find something, anything, interesting in the noise of reality. And it forces us to ask a deeply unsettling question. If the house of science is unstable, how much of what we think we know about ourselves and our world is built on hollow ground? The first major tremor was felt in 2011. It was not one event, but a perfect storm, a convergence of three distinct pressures that tested the foundation until it cracked. First, there was the pressure of the impossible. A highly respected psychology journal published a paper by Daryl Bem, providing statistical evidence for precognition, the ability to feel the future. A finding that seemed to violate the known laws of physics, yet it had passed the highest standards of peer review. It was a result so unbelievable that it suggested one of two things. Either reality was not what it seemed, or the methods used to test it were fundamentally broken. Then there was the pressure of the malicious. That same year, the world of social psychology was rocked by the exposure of Diederik Stapel, a charismatic academic superstar. He was found to have committed outright fraud, fabricating data from whole cloth for dozens of high-profile studies. His work was cited, taught in universities, and used as the basis for other research. He had built entire beautiful rooms in the House of Science with bricks that were pure fiction. His case revealed a terrifying vulnerability. A system built on trust could be exploited by a convincing liar. Finally, there was the pressure of the systemic. A now famous paper titled False Positive Psychology was published. In it, researchers proved, with statistically significant results, that listening to a song by the Beatles could literally make a person younger. They achieved this impossible result not through fraud, but by using the flexible, accepted statistical methods common in the field. They were sending a clear message. The problem wasn't just a few rogue scientists. The problem was the system itself. The tools everyone was using were so pliable that they could be used to build illusions. The impossible, the malicious, and the systemic. It was a trifecta of failure that forced the scientific community to look down at the very ground upon which they stood. A foundation isn't destroyed by one great blow. It's undone by the silent, steady pressure of its own internal flaws. Section 1. The Engine of Discovery. To understand the flaw, we must first understand the engine. For much of the 20th century, psychology fought for a seat at the table of hard sciences. It suffered from a kind of physics envy, desperate to shed its reputation as a soft, subjective field. To do so, it embraced the cold, hard certainty of mathematics. It built an engine to drive its research, an engine designed to separate a true signal from random noise. That engine is called null hypothesis significance testing, and its most critical component is the p-value. The p-value is, at its core, a measure of surprise. Imagine you have a hypothesis, for instance, that a new smart pill improves memory. You run a study. The p-value tells you the probability of seeing the results you got if your pill actually did nothing at all. A low p-value, by convention less than 0.05, means your result was very surprising, very unlikely to be a random fluke. And so you can reject the null hypothesis that the pill does nothing and declare your finding statistically significant. This single number, PA less than 0.05, became the gatekeeper of scientific truth. It was the key that unlocked publications, the password for funding, the foundation for careers. It was designed to be a simple tool for detection. But over time, the system warped its purpose. The engine was no longer just used to detect a signal. The pressure of the academic world incentivized researchers to create one. This created a garden of questionable research practices, or QRPs, a shadow methodology that operates in the gray zone between rigorous science and outright fraud. These aren't necessarily malicious acts. They are the product of human bias and a system that disproportionately rewards exciting, positive results. One such practice is cherry-picking. Imagine you test your smart pill on 10 different memory tasks. 9 show no effect, but one shows a statistically significant improvement. The researcher, perhaps convincing themselves the other 9 tasks were flawed, decides to only publish the one that worked. They have cherry-picked their results, presenting a single, perhaps coincidental success as a definitive breakthrough. Another is optional stopping. A researcher collects data from 20 participants, and the p-value is not quite significant, maybe 0.07. The system gives them no reward for this. So, they decide to collect data from 10 more. Now, the p-value dips to 0.04. They stop the experiment immediately, declare victory, and publish. They have effectively given themselves multiple chances to win the statistical lottery. The most insidious is harking, hypothesizing after the results are known. A researcher runs a massive study with hundreds of variables, finds a surprising correlation between, say, ice cream sales and shark attacks, and then writes their introduction as if they had predicted this exact, absurd relationship all along. It transforms a chance discovery into a profound prediction. These are the ghosts in the machine, the subtle sleights of hand that can turn noise into a signal and a fluke into a fact. The engine was designed to find truth, but the system rewarded it for finding headlines. Section 2. The Library of Illusion. The problem is then amplified by another systemic flaw, a bias so pervasive we often don't even see it. It's called the file drawer problem. Imagine the entirety of scientific research as a vast public library. Each study conducted is a book written. When a study yields a positive, exciting, statistically significant result, it gets published. That book is given a beautiful cover, placed on the new releases shelf, and celebrated. But what happens when a study yields a negative or null result? What happens when the smart pill shows no effect? That book is deemed boring, uninteresting. It rarely gets published. It is quietly placed into a locked file drawer in the library's basement, never to be seen by the public. The consequence of this is a library that is profoundly misleading. When you walk through its aisles, almost every book you see is a success story. A 2015 study found that a staggering 96% of published papers in psychology and psychiatry reported positive findings. The public record becomes a highlight reel of constant breakthroughs, creating the illusion that science is a relentless march of progress where almost every hypothesis is correct. But the library is lying to you through omission. The basement is overflowing with the unpublished books of failed experiments, null results, and boring truths, books that would give context, that would show how many times the smart pill didn't work. This creates a dangerous distortion. A single study showing a positive result, published in a top journal, can seem like definitive proof. But we don't see the 9 unpublished studies from the file drawer that found nothing. The scientific record itself becomes a form of institutionalized false memory, remembering its successes with vivid clarity while conveniently forgetting its countless failures. A library that only displays its triumphs is not a library. It is a hall of propaganda. Section 3. The Reckoning. The tremors of 2011 eventually triggered a tsunami. Fueled by the growing unease, massive collaborative efforts were launched to systematically test the integrity of the scientific literature. These were the replication projects. The premise was simple. Take 100 prominent, published studies and just do them again, as closely as possible. The results of these projects were the wave that finally crashed against the walls of the House of Science. A landmark project published in 2015 attempted to replicate 100 studies from 3 top psychology journals. The original studies were the bedrock of textbooks, the darlings of the media. The result was a cataclysm. Only 36 of the 100 studies could be successfully replicated. Let that number sink in. Nearly 2/3 of these published truths vanished like ghosts when the light was shone on them again. And even for the few that did replicate, the observed effect was, on average, half the size of what was originally reported. The brilliant, earth-shattering breakthroughs had shrunk into modest, barely significant whispers. Another project targeting studies from the elite journals Nature and Science found a higher replication rate of 62%, but still, a significant portion could not be verified, and the effects were again much smaller. This was no longer a theoretical problem. This was a full-blown crisis. It was a crisis of methodology, but it quickly evolved into something deeper, a crisis of confidence. For scientists, it was an existential threat. If you can't trust the published literature, what can you build upon? If you can't trust your own methods, what can you discover? And for the public, the implications were even more dire. How many medical treatments, government policies, or educational strategies were based on findings that were, in all likelihood, just statistical noise? The foundation wasn't just cracked, it was revealed to be alarmingly unstable. It wasn't just a failed experiment, it was a failure of the scientific memory. In the wake of the crisis, a reform movement has begun. It is a slow, arduous, and ongoing effort to rebuild trust and reinforce the foundations. New ideas are taking hold. Pre-registration, where scientists publicly declare their hypothesis and analysis plan before they collect data, locking them in and preventing hacking or cherry-picking. Open science, a push for researchers to share their raw data and methods publicly, allowing anyone to check their work. And a cultural shift, where journals are slowly beginning to value and publish replication studies, even the boring ones that fail. We are in the process of installing a new, more rigorous engine. The story of the replication crisis is a cautionary tale. It shows that science is not a sterile, objective path to truth. It is a human endeavor, susceptible to the same biases, pressures, and errors of judgment that plague every other aspect of our lives. It is a powerful reminder that we must remain eternally vigilant, eternally skeptical, even of the things we hold most certain. We began by describing science as a collective memory. The analogy holds. We now know that our own individual memories are not perfect recordings, but are reconstructed, edited, and sometimes entirely fabricated. Science, it turns out, is no different. Its collective memory can be warped by bias, the file drawer problem. It can be corrupted by flawed mechanisms, p-hacking, and sometimes it can be outright false, fraud. The beauty of science, however, is not that it is infallible. Its true power lies in the fact that it contains the tools for its own correction. It is a system designed, at its best, to discover its own mistakes. The crisis of confidence, as painful as it has been, is science working. It is the immune system of knowledge, finally identifying a disease and beginning the slow process of healing. The goal of science is not to be right, it is to become, over time, less wrong. Until next time, stay curious.